It's Saturday afternoon, it's 1:30, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for a bit of mathematical literacy. Now, if we had wonderful effects, you'd hear whistles go, people cheering, balloons falling. Fortunately, that's not going to happen. But we're still excited about some maths literacy. Now, you guys have had quite a morning. I believe you've had maths, and you've had a bit of science, and now biology. But it seems they've left the best for last. Maths lit. Because life's all about real stuff. And maths lit is about real stuff. Okay, now many of you who are matric have finished your classes, but just remember something very important, and I tell this to all my students. You finished your classes, but you haven't finished school yet. You got that tiny little thing called examinations that are waiting for you, okay? So we still need to remain focused right through until the end of November. Okay, now, at this stage of your matric year, the best way that you can revise is by doing past papers. One past paper, then another, then another. And you guys who do maths literacy, you'll know that your first paper that was written in matric was written in 2008. So you've got the 2008 papers you can go through, then the 2009, and then the 2010. And when you finish going through all those papers, start again. Do the 2008 paper, and then the 2009 again, and then the 2010 again. And when you've gone through them, you start the whole cycle again. Why? Because at the end of this year, when you see a question, you should recognize that question. So if I see a question on percentages, I should be able to say, my goodness, I know how to do that. I saw a question very similar to that just the other day when I was doing the 2009 paper or the 2010 paper. All that's different this year is they've just used different numbers. Okay? So that's the way you should be learning from now. Past paper after past paper after past paper. It's the only way to get your level 7 at the end of this year. So what we're going to do today is we are going to do just that. We are going to go through one of your past papers, and the paper we've selected this afternoon is from the KwaZulu-Natal department, and it's your prelim paper you wrote earlier this year. Now, if you're busy watching and you're not from KwaZulu-Natal, it doesn't mean you switch off now, okay? Because you can still learn a lot from it, because ultimately, hopefully, the people who set those prelim papers have based it on the past papers that were written in the finals. And so it's a learning opportunity all the time. Okay? Right. Now, just a few things I want to say. During this broadcast, you've got to pay quite a bit of attention. We're going to be talking for about an hour and a half to each other. Now, to sit and focus for that time is going to be quite difficult. So we're going to try and really spice up the program a bit, inject it with a little bit of humor, hopefully, and you'll be able to just focus for that full hour and a half. I want us to look at the screen quickly, and I just want to bring one thing to your attention here. If we look at the screen and I do the following. Okay? Now, if I were to say to you, copy that down on a piece of paper, you could all do that. You could draw a little squiggly line here, one up there, one down there, a funny little shape there. You wouldn't know what on earth you're actually copying down. You wouldn't have the foggiest idea, but you could copy it down. And that's what I always say to my students is this. It's no good sitting in a classroom and just copying down whatever the teacher's writing. You've got to understand what that teacher's saying. So for the next few minutes while I'm talking to you, I'm going to ask you to do the following. Don't take notes, okay? You can get all these notes off the website, okay, which is on www.facebook.com/learnextra, okay? So you can get all the notes that I'm going to talk about today. But it's no good having the notes and not understanding them. So you listen to me, sit back, relax, focus on what I'm saying, and after the program, maybe next week, Monday or Tuesday, get hold of that paper that I'm going to go through now. Get hold of the KwaZulu-Natal prelim paper, and then try and work through it yourself. Okay? But today is about understanding. So, what's going to happen at the end of the year? At the end of the year, you're going to write 2 papers. Paper 1, paper 2. Now, we all know paper 1 is a skills paper. In other words, we just want to know, do you understand the basics? Do you understand how to calculate a ratio? Do you understand how to calculate a percentage? Okay? Do you know what a graph is going to look like if I charge you for hiring a motor car, for example? So if I go off to rent a car and I say, how much is it going to cost me to rent this car? And they say, well, it's going to cost you so much a day and so much a kilometer. Am I able to work out that final cost? And that's what paper 1's all about, just the basic skills. Paper 2 now, on the other hand, is about applying those skills. Now, today we're focusing on the paper 1. Next Saturday, same time, 1:30, we're going to be focusing on the paper 2, the application. Today, though, skills. Right, enough of the talking, enough of the introduction, let's get going. So, question 1, here it was. Answer the following question. Write 20% as a decimal fraction. Okay, now, the next thing I'm going to say is this, that no question is a question unless there is a mark allocation to that question. Because that mark allocation is a guidance. It's going to tell me, hey, you've got a lot of work to do for this question because it's 5 or 6 or 7 marks. Or it's going to say, you know what, guys, this question's only worth 1 or 2 marks. It's actually quite basic. It's quite simple. Okay? So once I've read the question, I look at that mark allocation. So let's do that. Write 20% as a decimal fraction, 2 marks. It's not going to be strenuous at all. 20%. What is percent? Well, percent is over 100, isn't it? Okay? And we want 20%. So it's 20 over 100, and we want to write that as a decimal fraction. In other words, we want to write it as 0, something. So how are we going to do it? Well, quite simply, we're going to use our calculator to do it. And we are going to do that exact thing that you see on the screen. 20 divided by 100. So let's do it. 20 divided by 100 equals 1 over 5, but 1 over 5 is not a decimal. That's just a simplified fraction. Got to write it as a decimal. So let's go to our calculator again. We're going to push this button, S to D, and there's our answer, 0, 2. Okay, so equals 0, 2. Straightforward, simple, basic. We're not even going to hang around interpreting that question any further because it's so simple. Next question. Now, simplify the following. The square root of 64 minus bracket 50 divided by 10 plus 5. Now, folk, if your exam paper says the following, show all your working, then you have to show all your working. And invariably, there's 2 important things that will be on the front cover of your exam paper. The first one will say, show all your working. And the second one will say, where necessary, round to 2 decimal places. And we've got to remember that throughout the paper. Where necessary, round to 2 decimal places. Now, square root 64. Let's have a look at this. We know that the square root of 64 is 8. Why? Because 8 times 8 is 64. Minus, now, let's have a look at this. 50 divided by 10 is 5. This is straightforward stuff, isn't it? Plus 5. So, 8 minus 5 is going to give me 3. 3 plus 5 is going to give me 8. Guys, straightforward, simple. You're probably sitting back on your couch now and laughing yourself sick because it's so easy. But that's okay, because we've got to get you into this whole thing. We're warming you up for the big stuff later on. Next question. Convert 180 minutes to hours. How many minutes in an hour? There are 60. Absolutely. And if you're not sure, then look at your watch. If you have a watch, we all seem to use our cell phones for our watches now. But if you have a watch, look at your watch and sit there for an hour and count how many times that hand goes around. And you'll see it'll go 60 times. Okay, so there's 60 little minutes in an hour. So how many hours in 180 minutes? Well, that's straightforward. We're going to say, well, I've got 180 in total. We're going to divide it by 60 because there's 60 minutes in an hour. And 180 divided by 60 is going to give me 3. 3 what? 3 hours. Remember, we've got to tell the examiner the units we're dealing with. Right? Pretend your examiner knows nothing. Pretend the person who's marking your paper at the end of the year knows nothing. So you got to tell them everything, okay? So it's not just 3, but we're going to say 3 hours. Great. Next part. Convert 150 minutes to hours and to minutes. Now this is a little more challenging because what we're now going to have is when I say 150 divided by 60, I'm going to discover that 60 doesn't go into 150 very nicely. We're going to land up with a comma something at the end of it. So let's look at it. I'm going to say I've got 150. We're dividing that now by 60, and I'm going to land up with 2.5. Okay, so we land up with what? 2.5 hours. Now, folks, if I leave my answer like that, I'm in for trouble. I'm going to lose some marks. Why am I going to lose marks? Because the question said quite clearly, convert 150 minutes to hours and minutes. Right. Now, I'm going to make a mistake, and I'm going to do this deliberately because we're going to learn something here. So what does that mean? Does it mean I've got 2 hours and 5 minutes? No, it doesn't. What it means is I've got 0.5 hours. In other words, I've got half an hour. So I've got 2 full hours plus another 0.5 hours. In other words, another half an hour. What's half an hour? 30 minutes. So we have 2 hours and 30 minutes. Happy with that? Right. I'm going to teach you something on your calculator. If you have a calculator similar to this, let's have a look at it. There's this funny little button over here, which has got a circle, a comma, comma, comma. Now that button is my time button, okay? And that button, I think, is one of the most phenomenal features of these calculators, because it can help me convert hours into hours and minutes. It can help me convert minutes into hours, minutes, and seconds. Let me show you how. Firstly, we've got to remember the following. When I put in a time, I've always got to put my hours, then push my time button, and I'll show you now. Then minutes, time button, and then seconds and time button. If I don't have any minutes, I've got to tell the calculator that I have no minutes. If I have no hours, I've got to tell the calculator I've got no hours. Calculator doesn't have a brain of its own, okay? You've got to punch information into it to get it to work. So let's have a look at it. If I wanted to convert 150 minutes, I'm going to say, right, I've got no hours. And so I push 0, then the time button. I've got 150 minutes. So no hours, 150 minutes, and I've got no seconds. Okay? Now I'm going to push equals, and watch what's going to jump up on my screen. Equals. My giddy aunt. There it does it for us, eh? 2 hours, 30 minutes, and no seconds. Guys, that calculator is wonderful. You should take it and embrace that calculator and use it as much as you can. It's got phenomenal stuff, phenomenal features that are going to help you get your level 7. So I've now worked out that 150 minutes is 2 hours, 30 seconds. Now I just want to stop for a minute and say this. Although my calculator can do wonderful things, if my exam paper says show all your working, guys, let's go back here. I've got to show all this working, Okay? I can't just say 150 minutes equals 2 hours, 30 minutes. I've got to show the examiner how I got to that. But I can use that calculator to check my work. Happy? Time to move on. Next one. Simplify the ratio 90 to 270. Now again, I'm going to teach you another little trick with your calculator. Okay? 90 to 270. Let's have a look at this calculator. What we're going to do is this. I'm going to push my fraction button, and I'm going to write 90 on top, and at the bottom, I'm going to push 270. I'm going to push equals, and look what happens. I get an answer of a third. Now, I can't write a third on as my answer. Why not? Because my ratio is given to me 90 to 270. And if it's given to me as 90 to 270, then my answer has to be something to something. It can't be something over something, right? So, what does 1 over 3 mean? Well, it basically means 1 is to 3. So my calculators actually help me get my answer straight away. So 90 to 270 is 1 is to 3. If I never had a calculator, how would I have worked that out? Well, I would have said what goes into 90 and what goes into 270. And clearly, 90 will go into 90, and 90 will also go into 270. To make life even easier, I could have actually said, right, 90 to 270. Let's get rid of those zeros. Now I'm dealing with 9 is to 27. Okay, how did I get rid of those zeros? I divided both sides by 10. Now, what will go into 9? What will go into 27? Well, 9 will. 9 goes into 9 once. 9 goes into 27 3 times. There we go. Same answer. Great. Let's keep going. Next one. Divide 360 Rand into the ratio of 1 is to 2 is to 3. Okay. Next week when we do our paper 2, you would probably get a question, instead of saying divide 360 in the ratio of 1 is to 2 is to 3, you might get a long story with that question. For example, we could say to you, you know what, a whole lot of guys rocked up to paint the teacher's classroom, okay? In fact, not a whole lot, only 3 guys rocked up to paint the teacher's classroom. And the teacher thought, geez, these guys are so good, I'm going to pay them. But I've only got 360 Rand. Shame, poor teacher, okay? Only got 360 Rand, and I want to give it to these 3 guys. But here's the problem. The 3 guys don't stay for the whole day. One stays a short while, another one stays maybe a few hours longer, and the 3rd guy, he stays the longest. So the teacher thinks, well, if I take this money, 360 Rand, and I divide it out equally, well, that's kind of not fair, is it? Okay? The one guy's worked harder, he needs a bit more. The other guy's worked, well, not as hard as the one guy, but not as a few hours as the first guy. So we're going to divide the money out in a ratio of 1 is to 2 is to 3. Okay. Now let's have a look at this. This 1 is to 2 is to 3 tells me she's going to divide this 360 Rand into 6 parts. Why 6 parts? Well, we've got 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, and that means a total of 6 parts. So how much money does 1 part represent? Well, I've got 360 Rand. I'm going to divide that by 6. And then realize when I say 360 divided by 6, I'm going to get 60 Rand. In other words, every 1 part is worth 60 Rand. So the guy who gets 1 part, so we got a ratio of 1 is to 2 is to 3. The guy who gets 1 part is getting 60 Rand. The chap who's getting 2 parts is getting twice that amount. So if he got 60, he's getting 120. And the final chap, chap number 3, he's getting 3 parts, every part 60, he must get 180 Rand. So let's write that down right here. So we're going to say 1 is to 2 is to 3, which means 60 Rand then we're going 120 Rand, and then we're going 180 Rand. Now, folk, if we've done this properly, when we add up all these bits, we should get 360 Rand. Let's have a look. 60 plus 120 is 180. 180 plus that 180 is indeed 360 Rand. Great. Are we okay? Let's keep going on. My next question. We want to express 1,6 meters as kilometers. Oy, 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 oy. Now, I bet a whole lot of people who wrote this exam got things mixed up a little bit, okay? Because the number we've been given is not a very nice number. In fact, our dear examiner who set this, he actually put this in to try and trick you. Because I bet a lot of you said, oh, this is easy. There are 1,000 meters in a kilometer. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to say 1,6 times 1,000, and I'm going to get an answer of 1,600 kilometers. But clearly that cannot be right, because 1,6 meters is, and I don't know if you're going to get it in on the screen. In fact, I don't even know if you get this huge thing in on the screen. But if I had to put my arm out from the tip of my finger over here all the way to my shoulder, okay, is round about a meter. So 1.6 meters is a little bit longer than that. I would say it's probably from the tip of this finger, can you see it? And it's gone right off the screen, and to my elbow, right? Now that's the length of 1,6 meters. Guys, that is not 1,600 kilometers. 1,600 kilometers is like traveling from Joburg all the way to Cape Town and still carrying on, okay, into the Atlantic Ocean. So clearly, although we know there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer, we're not going to multiply, so let's get rid of that. No, we are going to divide. So let's divide it. So 1,6 divided by 1,000. Now, a lot of the chaps I teach get a little bit confused, and they say, well, how many places must my decimal move? And I say, guys, don't make life terrible for yourselves. Use your calculator. You paid money for it. Use the thing. So let's bring up our calculator straight away. And we're going to say, right, I got 1.6. I'm going to divide it now by 1,000. And voila, there's my answer, 0,0016. So let's write that down straight away. We're going to try and write it down straight away. There we go. 0,0016. What? Kilometers. Happy? Okay. Just use logic when we answer these questions. Is it possible for 1,6 meters to be 1,600 kilometers? It's not possible. Okay. So obviously, if we get a whacker answer, we've done something wrong. Just use a little logic. Let's move on. The next question. Convert or express 8 kilograms as grams. Now, which is smaller, a gram or a kilogram? A gram is a lot lighter than a kilogram. So if we're taking 8 kilograms and we're converting it to grams, we're expecting a lot of grams. How many? Well, we've got 8 kilograms. How many grams in a kilogram? There are 1,000. Am I going to multiply or am I going to divide? Well, if I divide, I'm going to get a tiny little bit of grams. And that's not possible. We're expecting a lot of grams. So I'm going to multiply. So when we multiply that out, we then get 8,000 grams. Oops, now I'm writing kilograms. There we go. Grams. Happy? Of course you are. Let's move on. Just incidentally, if you've got a problem with what I'm talking about, you can actually phone us in, hey? You can phone us at 0861 058 262. That's 0861 058 262. And you can actually say, oi, I didn't quite understand what you were talking about there. Help me out. And maybe I'll be able to do that on live TV. Go figure. Right, next question. Calculate 5/8 of 6,000. All right. I think what we're going to do before we do this then, let's just take a quick little ad break. You go off, grab a glass of water or a cup of Coke or a cup of coffee and meet us back there here in about 2 to 3 minutes. We'll chat soon.